Donald Trump's like, you know what? I'm getting rid of all of it. All the fat, it's gone. DOGE is in there looking for the efficiency operations that they can put in place, and we're getting rid of 6,000 IRS employees. What do you know? And guess who says it's not enough? I love this clip. Kevin O'Leary, good guy. He's on Shark Tank. Mr. Wonderful, I think they call him. And he's like, we need more. We need even more. And you should see the faces, right, of the CNN people around the table. They're like, who is this guy? Is he for real? Yeah, you know what? Because he's worked as an investor. He's worked in private equity. He's run companies. He gets how it's done, just like the team that's running the show in the White House right now.
I think the issue is they're not whacking enough. There's this concept in private equity when you get a bankrupt company and you go in there, you cut 20% more than your initial read. And then you find like a pool of mercury, the organization gels back together again. Always cut deeper, harder when there's fat and waste. The FAA, it's not the people. The code is cobalt. It's from the 60s. It needs CapEx put into it for the technology to be upgraded to make it safer. Fat like a chicken. All of these agencies are like big fat chickens dripping over barbecues of fat. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen, but I don't think it's happening fast enough. They're not cutting enough. Keep slashing, keep hacking while you have a 24-month mandate before the midterms. Cut, more cutting. Believe me, it's going to work out just great. Everybody should be happy.
Even people with the nuclear codes, cut them too?
Cut everything. Because if you don't see what they're doing and they can't show you that they're adding value, you whack.
But it's clear.
Ooh, they don't like that. They don't like that. I had this argument once, like years ago, when I was on Bloomberg television. And I remember I had Gene Sperling, who was head of Obama's Economic Council on at the time. And we got into this full-blown, like, serious kind of fight on the air because I kept saying, but wait a second, why do you need to keep increasing spending with GDP? Like, think about it. If you're a household and you're lucky enough to get a raise and you get, let's call it a 10% raise, okay, at your job, do you automatically increase your spending in your household by 10%? No. You know, ideally, you never spend the raise. You try to save the raise, right? And if you're like us, and you're spending more than you make, and you got this giant deficit, and you're spending all this money on interest, 14% of what you take in is just going to interest on the debt. I mean, that's about as much as you're putting towards defense. Then you might want to think about that. You might want to not spend as much as you make. And you don't need to. Just because GDP is growing doesn't mean you have to spend more. And Elon Musk is laying it out there. He's like, look, if we don't fix this, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to have big problems. He spoke on Hannity's show the other night with Donald Trump. This is an important clip.
I really want to emphasize to people that this is a very important point. If we don't solve the deficit, there won't be money for medical care. There won't be money for Social Security. We either solve the deficit or all we'll be doing is paying the debt. It's got to be solved, or there's no medical care, there's no Social Security, there's no nothing. It's got to be solved. It's not optional. America will go bankrupt if this is not done. That's why I'm here.
He's not collecting a salary for this, just to point out. By the way, neither is Donald Trump. And it's not like Donald Trump was able to walk into a whole bunch of speaking engagements when he left office last time. No, instead, they were trying to bankrupt him. Letitia James with her nearly $500 million fine against him. I mean, crazy stuff, right? And so they're out there trying to fight the good fight, and they're finding what? $2.7 trillion going to improper payments for Medicare, Medicaid all over the world. This is Caroline Levitt the other day. You may have to turn up the volume a little bit, but it's worth hearing.
Back to DOGE just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marcia Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some of this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us. Unfortunately, I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing. Those are the things that DOGE is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody,
accountability, transparency. That's what is needed. That's what you have in a private marketplace. And guess what? The board of directors and the CEO, they all have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to actually maximize value. There's like no duty to anyone there in Washington, D.C. Otherwise, other than, I guess, to maximize their own pocket, the value for their own pocket. And this is what has to fundamentally change. In other words, you got to get rid of all the junk. Or as JD said at CPAC today, I want you to hear this. He said, we got to stop spending money on garbage. One, we can help reduce inflation by, say, allowing drilling and thereby lowering energy costs here in the U.S. But the other big thing here that we got to focus on is to stop spending money on garbage. Listen.
People. The second thing, Mercedes, is we have got to stop spending the American people's money on garbage. Every dollar that we take in and spend, you have to pay for, either through taxes or through inflation. And if we spend the American people's money more wisely, if we stop taxing and spending the American people to death, that's also going to bring relief to all of the pricing pressures that are out there. We're going to make it affordable to live in this country again. That's our mandate. That's our goal. And you're right. There's a lot more that we can do, but I think we've got a pretty good start after 30 days.
Imagine. Let's make it affordable to live in America again. Let's get back to our roots. I mean, you think about what a great country this has been. Well, Donald Trump's looking at some of this quote unquote fraud that's going on. I mean, they may not even call it fraud. They're just going to say, you know what? This is where we choose to spend our money. $2 million for transgender operations in Guatemala. Why not? Tens of thousands of dollars for trans opera in Colombia. Why not? DEI musical in Ireland. Oh, we'll throw a little over here, a little over there. It adds up, folks. It adds up.
Where's the money being spent, right? Let's go into that for just a second. $520 million for a consultant on the environment. It's called Environmental, Social, and Governance. Investments in Africa and mobilize private sector resources. $520 million. Somebody got $520 million for an environmental, sounds like an environmental study. I've always been one that paid a lot of money for my environmental studies, but I paid like $50,000, not $520 million. $520 million for ESG. $25 million.
I mean, it's unbelievable. He actually went on for about 4 minutes listing all those. And then he's like, you know what? I can't even get through them all. They've got a DOGE website now, though, so you can peruse that at your leisure. This is really gross, you guys. It's really gross and it's really unacceptable, and we can change it. So why not? This is why he was elected. And this is why when you look at the approval numbers and you see 70% of Americans are saying he's doing exactly what he promised he would do, they're on board. They like this. You know why? They don't like the fat. They don't like the inefficiency. They don't like having to turn over their hard-earned money to Uncle Sam, who then squanders it on ridiculous programs all over the world. I see in the comments one of you guys mentioning the issue with the migrant hotels in New York City, $200 million going actually to a company out of Pakistan that was owned by the Pakistan government to house people in the Roosevelt Hotel, a luxury hotel. It's absolutely bonkers. Steve Frischman, welcome back. Melissa, I see this is your very first show that you have been here live for, so thank you. We welcome you to the conversation. Look, they need to save money, and guess what? Donald Trump wants the money going back to you. Imagine.